Welcome back to the Between Breasts podcast. Jacko here, your host, and got a special guest. We always say special, but we always say special. We've got a special guest, don't we? But it genuinely is. Shawn Sherman from Square One System is doing some wizardry stuff with the human movement system. He's going to take you on a deep dive into a system that he has created that focuses on the nervous system. We talk a bit about breathing and how nasal breathing in particular is very helpful in some of the work that he does in improving people's quality of movement, athletic performance, as well as alleviating pain, working on some very, I guess, I was going to say simple principles, but it's simple in terms of going like, okay, he looks at the nervous system in simple movements like a walking gait, locomotion of just like walking or squatting, and looks at how the system is moving and what that is telling him about the nervous system. And what he's understood and worked out with the nervous system is if it's not happy, you will sort of it doesn't feel safe, it will protect, and it will either not like one side of the body or the other. And it goes into the explanation and the detail to essentially say that how you give information into the nervous system using vision, head position, the eyes, and a few other bits and pieces that I can't remember, to let the nervous system know that the body and those joints are okay. It's a fascinating episode of the podcast. He's doing some absolutely fascinating work. And I think for any of you that are involved in working with clients that have some level of pain, or if you have pain yourself, or you work with people on movement, or you work with people on athletic performance, he's going to open up some questions for you that you may want to go and explore. And he's got some great resources online and does workshops and things in person that you can go and check those out once you've listened to the podcast. Other things that you might also want to do some additional learning are, I want to let you know about very quickly, is the next Oxygen Advantage certifications that I am running as a master instructor. So the next one is online over 8 weeks. We do one session a week over 8 weeks, starting from the 2nd of April. So that's coming up fairly soon. That's online, so you can join that from anywhere in the world. All the sessions are recorded and you get lifetime access to all of the replays, as well as the entire Oxygen Advantage portal and resources that it provides. And additionally, you get ongoing mentoring, group support with myself as your master instructor and mentor. That means we've got a coaches WhatsApp group for all of the coaches that have done the certification with me, and we do a monthly session via Zoom, and we've actually got a meetup for the coaches at the end of April in North Wales as well. So do check that out. If you want to do it in person, the next one for in person is in May, 17th and 19th of May in Scotland at a retreat centre just north of Glasgow. So that is accommodation and food and everything all included. So we stay all together at the retreat centre. Details for both of those at probreathwork.com. Check out the certification tab there for that. And then we will also thank, of course, the podcast sponsors. We have two. The first, HMN24. We've got the hydration sachets products that in two flavors, lemon and raspberry. I mix them up. Actually, I haven't done that. Maybe I need to try and see what I mean. Mix it up as in like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I want a lemon juice today, or I have a raspberry. I always use these in my drinks for training, particularly for any long runs. I used to struggle with cramps before if I did anything over like a half marathon sort of distance. And since using hydration sachets, the Hydrate, I haven't had any cramps since using hydration sachets. And the levels of the different salts, it's not just sodium that you need. The levels of different salts in the hydrates are second to none. And the results are in how you feel. So in terms of those of you involved in training, I use these all the time and will continue to do so. These are the type of product that I would use regardless of whether they sponsored the podcast or not. I will report back on whether mixing lemon and raspberry together is a good idea or not. I'm looking forward to doing that. And then the other product that I use is Ketone IQ. So the ketones are a fuel source that goes directly to cross the blood-brain barrier. So this is something for like cognition, brain health, all improved with the usage of ketones. And Ketone IQ is from HVMN, and they are providing a 20% discount with the code JACO at hvmn.com. This is something that goes in my drink sachet with the hydrate together. Great for endurance events, but also great for focus and attention and concentration without any sort of downsides of caffeine that you might have normally to give you a little bit of a stimulant. So it's not a stimulant like that. And the other thing is the effect, the benefits that you'll see with your sleep. Certainly I've reported great benefits from my sleep using Ketone IQ. So the code JACO for hvmn.com gets you 20% off your Ketone IQs or any of the other products. And if you go to hvmn.com/JACO, link is in the show notes, you will that discount will automatically get applied. And then for HMN24, the hydration sachets, the link will be in the show notes, but the code JACO10 gets you 10% off any of the products. So there you go. 2 sponsors, 2 discounts. Get yourself involved, get yourself hydrated, get yourself fueled with ketones, and get yourself in a nice, comfortable position, maybe with a notepad to take some notes for Shawn from Square One System on the Between Breaths podcast. We enter this world taking our first breath, and sadly, we leave this place taking our last. And what I want to do with this podcast is to explore what happens between those breaths. I'm David Jackson, Jacko, and this is the Between Breaths podcast. So Shawn, welcome to the Between Breaths podcast.
Thank you, Jocko, for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
I certainly am myself. There is, I'll have said this in the intro a little bit of, for those of us that are coaches listening to the podcast, this is potentially some stuff might challenge your current way of thinking of how you look at the body. And Shawn has got a system, Square One system. And if you just give us, Shawn, a rather than me doing it a disservice or you a disservice, we'll go into more detail later, but very snapshot of like, what is Square One system about? And then I want we'll go into a bit of detail on like you personally and how you've got to where you are with the way you look at the human movement system or the human body, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah. I think in a nutshell, it's funny. I get asked that same question 1,000 times. I've probably given 1,000 different answers, but I would say as precisely as I can, I would say that Square One is a problem-solving framework to restore sensory integration. And we're looking specifically at the 3 senses that contribute to posture and movement. So we're looking at the vestibular system, visual, and proprioception. So we're able to find out where a person presently is having deficits, and then it tells us exactly which sensory input they need right now in the spot to restore homeostasis. And if we clear out enough reasons a person has to compensate, it's very common that we see, movement and posture outcomes change, whether it's pain, range of motion, better breathing, athletic skill. We see those things change rather rapidly, consistently, rather rapidly.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before we hit record about how sometimes when we're used to training, say, the musculoskeletal system or tissues where it takes time for those things to change, when you're going to something that's a little bit more brain-based, that it's those neurological inputs are more so instantaneous that sometimes people can, even if they see it it can look a little bit like voodoo, like magic-y type of stuff, right?
Yeah, for sure. And those are common names that when I've worked with teams, they call me Magic Man, Voodoo Doctor. I always take it as a compliment because it's like a little
That's
bit of a
good.
mind blow. So yeah. So I always say too, it's like we're looking at, really changing the person's perception, because reality is gravity's pulling straight down and the ground is hard.
Yeah.
But our perception of that directional pull, because of past injuries, past stress and trauma, it can become a little bit skewed. Like if you sprain an ankle, you're not going to put as much weight on that side for a period of time. And
Yeah.
then I think that perception kind of carries through the rest of our lives. So we're kind of zigging and zagging and compensating our whole life. And so much of classical tissue and skill training is trying to address the flaws that occur after our perception has been altered from
Mm,
injury. So we're saying is, well, it's not wrong, the tissue stuff. We're just saying maybe we should start with this brain thing. So if we can kind of scrub the nervous system a little bit, clean it up a little bit, and then
yeah.
continue on with the tissue stuff you're working. So I don't look at tissue as, it's not really tissue versus the brain. It's really how do we get more, better outcomes from our tissue-based training. And I think a really cool way to do that is to get the brain a little tidier, get that perception cleaned up a bit.
Yeah. It reminds me, when I, as a background as an S&C coach, strength and conditioning coach, where doing, it's very, I don't know if purist is the right word, but at the core of like strength and conditioning originally has always been like Olympic weightlifting and just getting strong. And if people are strong, they'll be faster. And if people are strong, they'll be more
Mhm.
resilient and get strong.
Right.
And the way we'd get strong is, lifting heavy things and pushing heavy
Mhm.
things, etc. And when God, I'm trying to think how long ago it was. It was the year before. It must have been like 2019. Done a Z Health performance course with Dr. Cobb that is neurological based training. Really, really good stuff. Amazing stuff. And it sounds like there's some similarities where going to the brain. And what it's making me think of is that what you described there, that example of a ankle injury, is
Mhm.
that the ankle changes the whole. We appreciate that like there is more than just the tissue and
Yeah.
muscles to the human body, everything. But then
Mhm.
when we typically treat something, we're going like I guess on the outside, what I'm thinking of is like almost like the outside shell being like has had to remold and reform. And in order
Mhm.
for that to adapt, and we're amazing at adapting, we adapt beautifully. It
Amazing.
just might be you might be
Yeah.
sore once you've adapted, but that your body is adapting, and the
Mhm.
tissues are adapting. And I'm going to get a bit weaker here, or a bit tighter here, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And in order for those adaptations to happen, those things that you said in terms of like our proprioception is going to be altered in that, either altering of it is creating that change or it also gets altered in it. The vestibular system, the way the brain is communicating and neuroplasticity is changing.
Mhm.
We tend to think these things are all like positive, which I guess they are, but maybe we're not looking at it as whether it's
Yeah.
positive or negative. We're just looking at it as it's just change,
Yeah.
it's just adaptation.
Right.
Whereas we
Yeah.
address the
Competition.
outside, right? And it's
Right.
like, but the
Right.
things that have happened to make the outside might not be the best word, but
I know. I follow.
you
Yeah.
see what I say,
What we
that
see with the
we're
naked eye, you're seeing the expressions. They lunge better.
let's address the inside.
Yeah. 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 For sure.
It
And
makes
that's stuff you
logical
can't see
sense.
with eye. Right. It's almost like I've been saying for a long time. I barely trust what I see with my eyes anymore. Early on in my career as a personal trainer, like I'll see something and I start building these stories, and I would run with that story and try to correct things, and sometimes it worked out and sometimes it wouldn't. So there's a lot of 50-50 propositions when you analyze movement with your eyes. Like if you see a restriction or range of motion, is that protective muscle guarding or is it impingement? Because those are two polar opposites. So if you're trying to put somebody back together and build a story around what happened and why they have kind of cruddy outputs, and you're kind of working back through their story that you're concocting in your own mind, and most of us don't ever really test it. It just, if it makes logical sense, as coaches we tend to just keep barreling
Mm.
forward. So if your story has 10 layers and they're all 50-50 propositions, what's the chance that you got the right story if you're just using the superficial expressions to guide your selection of exercises and in your interventions? So yes, I think with square one, it's like we're trying to get eyes inside the body, and you can't see the brain's perception of these different positions. Because I think what we're doing with square one, it's all about positions. It's positions of the eyes, which is vision, positions of the head, which would be your vestibular system, and then position of joints, there's your proprioception piece. So what we can't see with the naked eye is when the brain is given a thumbs up
Mm.
safe signal to these positions, and when it gives a down or thumbs down a threat perception. So what we're seeing is like what you're talking about is we're seeing these funky expressions, but like lunging is really complicated. Breathing is complicated. Squatting, there's a lot of pieces there. So if one piece is off, the chances of just watching them and say, "Oh, I see it. It's the knee diving in, and that's because of
Yeah.
X, Y." I say bullcrap, or I'll really say, prove it, because I'm wrong all the time, and it's really
Yeah.
humbling. Once I've learned how to interview the nervous system, it's like it's so fun. Like I'm wrong hundreds of times every day, and I just have to laugh at myself because it's a very humbling experience when we interview the nervous system, find out what is going on internally and what's missing, and again trying to get that missing in the inside to jive up with the outside. It's like it's hardly ever what I think it's going to be. So I've just learned to trust the system, give the nervous system what it needs,
Mm.
and a high percentage of these expressions on most of our clients, they start changing beautifully and very rapidly. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, it would be great to get an idea of a little bit more about what the system entails, but how you got to there. I just wanted to
Okay.
ask before that, is the type of person that you're working with, are they, is it a most commonly that they've got like a problem, an injury, or is it looking at optimizing performance,
Um,
and does it gear to more towards one than the other?
Uh, I would say with square one, we could work on anybody, young, old, athletic, not athletic, injured or not. So I really think it applies to all of us because everything we're doing is based on these base principles of neurology and these base principles that uphold locomotion, which is our one of our two most basic patterns. Our most basic mature pattern is getting upright, and then pattern number two is putting one foot in front of the other, locomotion. So it's geared around just our common human design. But yeah, most people find us like in the States here, we have this insurance model for medical care. And a lot of times people don't even look for me until they've exhausted
Everything
the medical
else, nothing
model.
else
They're
works.
out of
Yeah.
money, then like crap. Now they're desperate enough where they have to pay cash. So a lot of times we're getting desperate people who are in pain. And then I say our second biggest audience would be athletes looking for optimization. But I would definitely think 80 or 90% of people who find me, it's because they've been to the chiropractor, they've been to the physical therapist, they've
Yeah.
been to the massage people, they've tried a bunch of different things, Pilates, yoga, what have you, and then they're like, all right, I'm going to reach in my pocket and try this thing out. So yeah, we definitely are attracting. It's usually back pain plus knee pain, back pain plus neck pain, back pain plus elbow
Yeah.
pain. It's like back pain plus something else. Like everybody seems to have
Okay.
back pain in the United States, and I would assume over in
Yeah.
the UK as well.
Yeah.
We get a lot of back pain folks.
And say like a high performing or elite professional athlete
Hmm.
looking for optimization, that's quite a different type of clientele. Does it,
Yeah.
how you work with it, how you work, is it much different,
Um,
or is it?
No, I think it's almost identical, except so what we're doing is we assume the person has chaos internally at first. We find where there's preferences of the nervous system between up versus down for our static balance or our squat pattern. The nervous system is going to like kind of be afraid of one and kind of choose the other. Same thing with right versus left, and that's same high level athlete or someone who's in pain. So then once we restore temporary balance or temporary homeostasis through giving the person these specific neural inputs that they need, like either vision inputs, head inputs, or joint inputs. We get them back to temporary homeostasis, and then we challenge the nervous system through different activities. So I'd say the biggest difference with the athlete versus, you know, Mary, who's 70 years old down the street who had a knee replacement, is the athlete. Whatever I can kind of make up in my mind as a challenge, they can usually do it. Like I was working with some like high level wrestlers 2 weeks ago, and just on a whim, like, hey, can you go inverted and give me a couple handstand push-ups? They didn't even blink. They just boom, they just went upside down and did it.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that with general population people. Most people aren't throwing at that level of athleticism. So I
Yeah.
think the biggest thing with the athletes is I can whatever I make up in my mind, they can usually like put it in action. So it's kind of fun. Like I
Yeah.
give a whole bigger, broader range of ways to screw with an athlete, I think. Because they
Yeah.
can just do it. They're just more capable.
Yeah. And does
But
the,
same mind.
yeah, does it, in an athlete population, does it, is it sort of like integrated into their sort of strength and conditioning type of work that gym work that they would be doing?
I think that's ideal. Like, so if they seek me out individually and they find me, a lot of times, I go over common triggers on everybody. Like the first thing I mess with is mouth breathing. So it's, and I'm not just saying it because you're the host of
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah,
interview here, but it literally is the first thing I'll check is their ability to mouth breathe, and I put a little bit of force on their rib cage. So once we clear that, I move on to squatting. And then at that point, then we customize it more. So if an athlete finds me, I'll say, hey, what are some movements in the gym or even
okay,
in the competition that you either have a fear of or you catch yourself modifying to do? Like, what are you altering? So I'll kind of go after things that they're consciously aware that
okay,
they're
yeah,
kind of taking a second seat to. So I kind of go after things that they are already having issues with. And then after that, I kind of say, okay, run me through your warm up that you do every day, your morning routine, or right before a lift or before a training session. And then I kind of go over the most common things they're doing. So I try to take nothing for granted. So there's so many seemingly innocuous little activities that we all do that the nervous system is like, whoa, 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 I'm not so cool with this. So I'm
yeah,
trying to make sure that the nervous system is accepting of all the inputs that they're going to do on a day-to-day basis.
yeah,
And then if it's in a team setting where we go in and train the staff, we'll try to teach them the same. And there's multiple ways that we can restore homeostasis to the nervous system. So we show these teams like the long way, the short way, and everything in between. And then we say, here's how you could just filter, or you can mix this in with your warm-ups as
yeah,
whether it's
yeah,
one or big groups. So we show them different strategies that they can implement in a team setting to, have the same effect that I'm getting one-on-one with these athletes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, let's zoom back out before we go too deep in. Um,
Mhm.
to understand, like, how did Shawn get to this?
Oh,
This isn't like level one personal training. Like,
right.
how do you
Right.
get to this place where you look at the nuances of the nervous system rather than just trying to get people strong, how we traditionally
I
would
love it.
do, say, in the gym?
Love it. Yeah, I love our story. So I'm gonna do my best to give you the 3-minute recap.
Yeah,
I can, sometimes I'll shoot, that took 20
it's
minutes.
easy for it to turn into 30, right?
Yeah, so I'm gonna do my best to stay on point here. But I was just I was just a personal trainer for the first 3, 4, 5 years of my career. I got a 4-year degree in exercise sports science. And I was actually working with a lot of so I'm in Chicago where I started my business, or in the suburbs. So I was working with a lot of just fitness, mostly ladies. It was like these bankers' wives, right? So I live in this town where they hop on the train and go downtown, these bankers. So these affluent communities. So I was just working with these ladies who either, want to lose 10 kilos, or they're trying to train for a 5K, just really more kind of generic fitnessy type things. And then I personally had back pain from playing high school basketball. A lot of people in my life had pain. My dad had pain. So a lot of people close to me, back pain, like kind of ever present reality for a long time. So I hurt my back when I was about 14 or 15. And up until I was 27, I every day, like, unremitting back pain. Like, I mean, I thought it was like a 2 or 3 out of a 10 scale. Once I got out of pain, like, holy crap, that was actually a 6. But your brain does something weird
Yeah,
to, like,
yeah,
you kind of get used to it. It makes you tough. So I learned a system called muscle activation techniques in Denver, Colorado. So that's where
right.
I got introduced to muscle testing.
Yeah,
And that's looking at every restriction of range of motion as protective muscle guarding. And I'm going to say 2 out of 3 people can have a really, really nice effect from that system. So I became a zealot for MAT. It's helping a lot of people. I got personal help from it. Ended up working with the Chicago Cubs. That's a professional baseball
yeah,
team here in the United
yeah,
States.
yeah,
So I was the only guy doing MAT in Major League Baseball. Super fun. So I work with these elite athletes, and I have my private clients, and it was going really, really well. Had this one client that after his first 2 MAT sessions, there was no change. And in fact, it was stirring up his symptoms. So his legs were going numb. So he had back pain, neck pain, the typical like forward head posture, rounded
yeah,
shoulders forward. This dude was probably 45 to 50 years old at the time. And after 2 sessions, I say, hey, man, I don't know what you stepped in, but let me help you find a chiropractor or physical therapist, because I'm out of ideas on you. I'd like
yeah,
to keep seeing you, but I don't think what I have is going to help you.
yeah,
So
yeah,
he kept coming in to see me because I was honest with him. He's like, look, man, I've seen docs, chiros, PTs, massage people, and they usually don't throw their hands up until like 50 or 80 sessions. You're walking away from money after 2 sessions. I'm like, yeah, dude, because I don't want to frustrate you or myself.
yeah,
I have no more ideas. So that was how he ended up becoming the impetus behind Square One, and I didn't
Right.
know at the time he didn't. So this guy Alan would come in and see me about once a month, and and he would text me afterward and say, "Hey, why can't I feel my right foot?" And I would text him back, refer back to session 2 when I told you I have no idea what's going on, because I really didn't know what's going on with the guy. Like you're
Yeah,
the
yeah.
idiot that coming to see me. So this is going on for almost nearly 5 years.
Wow.
In 2008, I'm like, all right, that old common definition of insanity is knowing that, knowing,
Yeah, yeah.
no, what is it? My brain's
Doing the
not
same
working.
thing, but doing the same
Yeah, do the
thing, but
same thing
expecting
over and
different
over again,
results.
expect a different outcome. Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, Alan, I'm not crazy. I think you are, because you keep expecting a different outcome, and I'm not. So I decided to do the polar opposite of what MAT taught me. So instead of viewing his restrictions as protective muscle guarding, I just decided to assume that it was impingement. So Alan, if you put him on his belly, he couldn't extend. So for 40, 50 sessions, I'm working on empowering the posterior chain, trying to open him up, and wasn't getting us anywhere. So I put him on his back, and we just fed his nervous system, like kind of anterior chain muscle, joint action. So
Yeah.
open his jaw, capitis flexion, cervical flexion. So we're just doing a bunch of isometrics in the anterior chain. The next day he calls me, and I thought he was screwing around with
So
me.
these are just like muscle isometrics. So you're just
Yep,
holding
just
like
get in
a
position, hold,
holding a
yep, like
position.
5,
Yeah.
10-second holds, pretty low grade, like 20, 30%. So it's not super intense. Just
Yeah.
like hold this position, like little crunches.
Yeah.
And then, I remember doing like we did one dynamic one was we were doing eccentric on a sit up because he didn't have the strength. So he was flexible going into flexion, but he had no strength. So I'd
Yeah.
assist him up on a sit up. I'd hold his feet down, and I'd have him work as hard as he could to go as slow as he could. He's like
Okay.
shake because he's going
Yeah.
into coming out of it. Like he was just very weak. But the next day he calls me, all his pain's gone. He's telling me he's standing like a couple, 2, 3 inches taller. And he played golf that morning. He took off, it was either 11 or 12 strokes up the best round of golf. And I'm like, bullshit. Like I didn't believe him. I thought he was just yanking my
From
chain. So I
one
didn't
from one session where you just thought I'll
one
do the
session.
opposite of what.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. And so it was like it was such a massive change. It totally obviously got my attention because here's
Yeah.
this guy, my most frustrating client that I could help, that I was really trying. Yeah, so that changed everything. And then so then right away, I knew that we had to put range of motion exams on trial. That was the first idea. I'm like, I can't actually trust what I think I see with what I'm seeing with my eyes. So I can trust what I see, but I can't trust what interpretation I concoct. So our logical stories that we build need to be
Yeah.
put on trial. And we need to like actually use a
Okay.
little bit more of the scientific method. Okay, prove it. Just because you say it and you've been a
Yeah.
coach for 10 years or 50 years and what you're saying is logical, don't confuse logical with accuracy, because
Yeah.
that's what I was doing. I was thinking what I was thinking was kind of logical, but it was untrue. So then so I like, all right, we got to put this whole thing on trial, but how do we do that? So then I'm like, I need to figure out a specific question that I want to answer. So the question in my mind was, what happens when the foot hits the ground? So that was just a theme in my head. So what I did is I had the skill set as a neural response muscle tester that I acquired from MAT days. And all I did is nobody was talking about all these joint actions that relate to locomotion. And I looked back through my books from college, and nobody was
Yeah.
talking about it. I'm searching online. I couldn't find anywhere talking about it. I'm like, if I want to know how the machine works, I need to figure out how the machine works. Like nobody's talking neuromechanically when the foot hits the ground. Does the arch collapse, the ankle dorsiflexes, but what happens at the neck? What happens at the T
Yeah.
spine? What happens at the lumbar spine? And nobody was talking about it. So I just started experimenting all my clients, and everybody was either like having this thing where they're favoring going right with the right foot hitting the ground. So I'd bend the right toe into flexion, I mean maybe toe 2 into flexion. They have a nice positive neural response. And then if I go into extension on the same side, it'd be a negative response. And then that same person, I would go to the other side of the body, toe flexion on the left side would have this negative response, but toe extension would have a positive response. Like, okay, this is gait. So whatever's happening on the right side, the polar opposite's happening on the left side. So I just started literally loading every joint in the body in 3 planes of movement in both directions. And I just tediously did that on everybody and mapped it out. And everybody's either go right or go left. And there was no third option. So it's
Right.
just through experimentation and monitoring their responses to really was mimicking ground reaction forces. I could say that now. At the time, I was literally just I in my mind that the person's in outer space, there's no gravity, there's no ground, and I'm yanking their toes. What happens? So unwittingly, I was really mimicking ground reaction forces. So I
Yeah.
kind of uncovered this map, this neuromechanical map that governs a squat pattern and locomotion. So now when someone comes and sees me, whether it's grandma down the street or pro athlete, I'm comparing each person versus this grand design that's built into each one of us, that common design that we all share. So that's it wasn't 15 minutes, but it wasn't 3.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No, no. So like the blueprint of what is supposed to happen
Yes.
neuromuscularly,
I'd say neuromechanically, 'cause I kind of abandoned the
neuromechanically.
whole idea of muscle. I'm not
Okay, yeah.
anti-muscle, but
Yeah, yeah.
early on in this MAT, or after I abandoned MAT and kind of unwittingly at first developed a system, I got away from this idea of trying to analyze movement through muscle,
Yeah.
because every muscle has many jobs.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you say I'm
Yeah.
going to test their lat, like, oh, what do you mean? Like what job? And people look at me like I'm stupid. Like, well, extension, like, yeah, but it also internally rotates the shoulder, it externally rotates the shoulder, it
Yeah.
horizontally abducts it. It does a lot of
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
things. So I think muscles make really poor testing variables for those of us who are in the field working with people who have heartbeats and breathe. So like, I
Yeah.
think joint actions are a lot easier to isolate a joint action. So therefore, it's easier to test them out and find out good versus bad kind of type deal.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's a nice neuromechanical, mechanically, like what's supposed to be happening.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's very, it allows you to then look at the individual and compare it to the blueprint, and
Yep.
then you're able to go in and try and presumably like testing and retesting
Yep.
through uh, the squat pattern that you were looking at, or just whatever it is that they've got issues with.
Squatting or walking. Yep. Because I
Yeah,
believe that, I think those are hardwired into us. Everything beyond that, you can call it athleticism if you want. You call it a
yeah,
learned pattern. But even feeding ourselves, we have to learn how to do it. Like, you see a little baby, poke
yeah,
yourself in the
yeah,
head and stuff. It's
yeah,
funny, getting the little rounded forks and such. But everything we take for so many things we take for granted are learned skills. And I think it all boils down to get up and go. So really, we're taking all the complexity of human movement and boiling it down to up versus down and right versus left as
yeah,
simply as possible. So yeah, so it's this what you said before about zooming in and out. I use that terminology all the time. So I feel like this up, down, right, left is our zoom out, and then the zoom in is, okay, let's get in the nitty gritty. Which joint action right now for this guy is perceiving load or ground reaction forces as a threat? So we're kind of
yeah,
mimicking the ground reaction forces and find out what breaks them essentially.
yeah, yeah,
Softly breaks software.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to piece this up. I'm trying to be. I am listening to this as a listener as well, but I'm trying to get
Yeah.
into someone that's listening to this is going, okay, this sound. Some people will be like, you may have already said a few terms that are a bit like, oh gosh, someone,
Yeah.
they don't, that they haven't come across sort of neuromechanical or
Mhm.
whatever. The
Yep.
what they what we as a listener can try to take from some of these things, because what I'm thinking is that you're describing a process that is rightly so very individualized. So it's like I
Mm.
look at the person and I compare it to
Yep.
the blueprint, and then we go in and work with them.
Yep.
For people that aren't able to like come and see you, or someone that is trained in your system,
Yep.
are there some, and I'll give you an example from some of the work that I did, are there some common themes that you see that people could like maybe do a little assessment on themselves? Like, for instance, at the
Mm.
moment, I see a lot of stuff with looking at breathing. You're looking at like, I think of like above the collarbones and below the collarbones, and
Yep.
um sometimes in terms of how things like say T-spine, shoulder and spine things are moving, the rib cage dictating a lot of that, and there's or the position of it can influence it because they're so connected, obviously.
Yep.
There's not like a gazillion different ways that you see people compensating through their rib cage. It's like
Mm.
we're either sort of like projecting it forward and we're tilting back, or we've maybe got a little bit of a flare on one side compared to the other, or something like that, where
Mm.
I sort of do what you say. We go, right, you see something. For me, my process is like I see it, I then go, ah, that looks interesting. Like at
Mhm.
rest, that
Mhm.
looks like that could cause a problem there or there. And it's like, okay, but let's just let's just see if it's causing a problem or not. So look at the right
Right.
shoulder with some rotation maybe compared to the left. Let's look at spine rotation and compare the sides. And then if we see something, go, oh, okay, that's interesting. I've seen
Mhm.
something here. I think it might be affecting the way this person's moving, and then test. Yes, it is. And then at that point, it still might not be that the problem was with the rib cage or with breathing. It could
Golf
be
or
something
whatever.
else.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's like I'm going to do a thing that I think is going to help, and then retest and see whether like getting, if I feel like the rib cage looks like it needs to just like come down a
Mhm.
little bit or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and see. So I feel like there's a few common things that you see when you see loads and loads of people that I can say, okay, well, lie on the floor and look at yourself, or feel with your hands how much space have you got underneath your lower back or whatever. I could tell people like try this, and then try, depending on if you feel like it's pushed up, try doing this exercise. If you feel like you pull down, do this
Mhm.
exercise. Is there any like themes where people can start to get a feel for some of? I just think practically for someone to feel what you're
Um,
describing.
I think I can give some practical advice
Yeah.
that's a little different than what you were just talking about. Because I think if we look at outcomes, I always use the example of just simple mathematics. So if I say, hey, the answer to the question is 100, it doesn't tell you what the math problem was. You don't know if it was 1 plus 99.
Yeah.
You don't know if it was 1,000 divided by 10. You know if it's 11 times 9 point whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. So,
many ways to get to 100. So I think a lot of our people in our industry, we're starting at 100 and then we're guessing our way backwards. With square one, it's more like, well, here's second toe flexion on the distal joint. So I feel like we have all the base pieces. So we really just have to be more like a troubleshooter working forward from those base pieces. Now that doesn't mean we can't give some neat practical advice. So some stuff I've learned over the years that it would be very easy for, like, say, an athlete to incorporate in their workouts, or someone just does fitness workouts on their own. They go to the gym 3 or 4 days a week, what have you. There's some, and we can get into more specifics about how we actually reset the nervous system.
yeah.
But some of the easy resets we do, the two simplest ones that so far we've been messing with would be eye position plus a nasal breath. So if we tease things out and we assess somebody and we boil it down to, oh, look, eyes down is the problem, or eyes right, or whatever, we found that if you go eyes down and just do an isometric into that position, it'll clear things out. The problem is it's hard to assess yourself and figure out, do I need to go eyes up, down, right, left? What we found is as soon as you add a nasal breath to any eye movement whatsoever, it has this reset ability on the nervous system. So you don't even need to know, am I favoring right versus left, up versus down? You can just make the assumption, if you're a human being like the rest of us, you stepped in
Yeah.
some garbage over time. Like all of us, there's chaos internally, every one of us. Like I haven't met there is no perfect specimen. Everybody has their little
Yeah.
glitchy things. So what you can do during a workout is you can literally, after you're done the set, or even say you're doing a set of chin-ups, and it's hard to, like, your hands aren't free. You can literally look left or right or up or down diagonally, just eyes moving in circles, and nasal breath as you're actually performing the lift, or
Mm.
even in competition when like football over there is different than American football. Here, there's like stoppage in play all the time. But during any stoppage, we try to get our athletes like, hey, just have the presence of mind to do a nasal breath as you're headed back to the team huddle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to reiterate, any eye movement you can come up with, up, down, right, left, diagonal, statically, dynamically, it doesn't matter. If you couple that with a nasal breath, it's a reset. Another simple reset that you need your hands free is this flap of skin on your ear. It's called the tragus. It's kind of anterior and middle.
Yeah.
Um, if you do a double squeeze, it resets your nervous system. It's nice when I have somebody live, we can demonstrate this better for people. But for now, your audience will just have to take my word for it. Yep, exactly, right there.
Does
So
it
we
matter
found that,
which ear?
nope, it doesn't seem to matter right, left. It's very uncommon that one squeeze will reset. We've seen it a few times. Most people need a double squeeze, or just like a little pinch and a little rub, like half second, 2 seconds. It doesn't be very long at all. So you can just stream that into your workouts. So what I would suggest maybe is a
Let's just go
practical.
back to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what's the why? Like why on the ear?
Okay.
And have you come
Yeah.
across Perry Nicholson's work, Stop Chasing
Yeah,
Pain?
yeah, he's actually in New Jersey. We've not met personally. We haven't
Okay.
even texted yet. Yeah, he's all
Okay.
lymphatics and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it does a
So
lot of
what's
cool stuff
happening
on
was, yeah, a lot of people were asking me, like, so are you resetting the vagus nerve? It was a common question I was getting
it.
3 years ago, 2 years ago. And my answer, as best I can be, I try to be brutally honest. So my answer to a lot of questions is I don't know, because I don't. You know, the body's complicated, nervous system's complicated. I
Yeah.
only like to report on the things that I've personally experimented with. So
How
when
do you
people are,
know when you say that does the thing on the ear
yeah,
that
yeah.
does a? How do you know that that is? So what I'm
So
imagining someone's done it and then gone. I don't know if I feel
yeah,
it.
so you might not know. So we'll give a practical way that you can kind of check it on yourself a little bit. How I know personally is I'm working with somebody and say I'm doing a neuro response muscle test, which might be like arm out to the side. I'm
Yeah.
pushing down on them. It's not a force production test. It's kind of a quick deal. Can the brain send a signal to the shoulder quick enough?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So based on that, we can then map out they have a preference for going right or left, up or down. And then we can actually map it down to the specific joint action. So let's just say I
Okay.
found it was left hip abduction. That's a real common joint action a lot of people seem to present with. So I
Yeah.
won't do any proprioceptive input. I'll then go to the tragus reset, and then I go back and I check that hip. I'll shove them back in abduction, and it doesn't have that negative response. So we've cross checked
Right.
it
So
with all.
you literally, yeah, you can do something as simple as you check someone's range at the hip, you
Yeah,
then do the reset on the ear, and then
yeah,
then that
yeah.
hip range of motion is.
Yeah. So common one I do with like almost every client that walks in the door or for teaching a group, I'll have some laying their back. I'll, make sure they didn't fall off their motorcycle yesterday, make sure there's no trauma
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like make sure they're okay with me touching them. And I'll just pull, I pull in the heel, their legs are straight. I'll lightly pull in the heel and then I internally right versus left. And
Yeah.
it's really common when someone does that passive like that
Yeah.
flexibility check, straight
Yeah.
leg internal rotation. And we have examples on our Instagram feed multiple times. It's very common presentation. The right leg doesn't turn in. I don't know why it's righty over lefty because it doesn't seem to be left hand, right hand. I'm not even sure. It's probably like the guys at PRI, postural
Yeah.
restoration.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
They'd probably have an answer because they talk about
The
asymmetry of organs.
differences. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's probably they're probably onto the answer. I kind of don't care for my purposes. I'm just merely using to show people how you can change outcomes
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
So if anybody's listening to this, if you have a personal trainer or a coach, like just get with your pal, get with your buddy who's in the gym with you, and just check that in each other. And I'm going to say 95% of people they're not very symmetrical. All of us have
Yeah.
whether we're off 10 degrees or 50. Sometimes it's pretty egregious, and then just do that little tragus reset and then check it. And it's I would put a lot of money on it. It's going to work like 99% of the time because
And
that's what
it
we've been.
doesn't matter which ear in relation to
No,
which hip was
no,
negative.
no,
All right. I'll try.
no.
I'll
But that's
try
just
on Mrs. Jackie later.
what's up.
I'm gonna try it on the missus later.
Yeah. So check. So I always tell people make sure you don't put them in a plantar flexion because when you do that, it opens up the heel, and then everybody's pretty symmetrical and turning far. So you just want to
Okay.
lightly pull down on the heel towards you if you're standing
Yeah.
facing misses. And so you have to do a little bit of dorsiflexion and then turn in and then turn the other one in. And if you do it
Yeah.
at the same time, it's kind of you'll end up finding neutral. So I would do one and then the other. So your brain's like thinking about one and then the other as a true
Okay.
comparison.
Yeah.
And then and do it a couple times, get a feel for it,
Yeah.
and say, oh yeah, there's definitely an asymmetry here. Once you feel you got it, she sees it, then just have her kind of just rub on that a little bit, and then go and check it. And
And
you'll probably
presumably that could be whether that's hip internal rotation, but would be same
doesn't
for
matter.
shoulder internal
Yeah,
rotation or whatever.
and it can become a little bit. Could become from the knee, a little bit. If you pull in the heel, it should limit from the ankle. It's probably hip. It's not the best way to isolate hip internal rotation, but I don't care. I'm not trying to fix
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
hip. I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
trying to show, hey, here's a baseline, and it's kind of wonky. And we just give the brain a little bit of love here with that little tragus deal and turns in. Oh, so Jaco, you asked about where I figured that out or learned that. So
Yeah.
everyone was asking me about this. Am I resetting the Vegas? And I'd be like, I don't know. I'm not sure. And then after about 40 people asked me that, like, all right, I'm sick of saying I don't know. So I did my deep dive through YouTube. Went to YouTube. I just put in the vagus nerve, and it was like the first or second video I came across. It was really fascinating. It's a long title, but it's called "How Trauma Gets Trapped Inside the Body and What to Do About It."
Yeah.
And so I just watched this thing about 11 minutes, and she's getting into the vagus nerve and the trigeminal nerve, which is right above the ear. And it splits into ophthalmic region, maxillary, mandibular region, and how
Yeah.
facial expressions can influence emotions, and emotions can influence our facial expressions and back. So it's like motor drives sensory, and sensory drives motor. And then she's talking a little bit about ear anatomy and how that tragus actually there's a relationship with the vagus nerve. So the first client after watching that video, I was messing with frowning versus smiling. And we found that smiling, even if it's a fake, weird smile,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
has an alleviating response to the nervous system. And just putting on a
Yeah.
frown was having this negative response. But it was like really weird watching my client have this fake smile. I'm like, okay, I'm done watching fake. Weird. So I'm like, I'm gonna just jump and mess with the ear. So at first I was just kind of rubbing, kind of doing it for like 5 or 10 seconds.
Okay.
And it worked. I'm like, okay. So I'm always looking for minimal effective dosage. So instead
Yeah.
of doing it for 10 seconds, let's do it 5. And then I got
Yeah.
down to, hey, squeeze it. So I did like 5 squeezes, it worked, 4, 3, 2, 1 didn't work. I'm like, oh wow, 2 squeezes. So I just do field
Okay.
and that's how I came up with it. So it's not mine. I can't remember the lady's name, but I know it's how trauma gets trapped inside the body, what to do about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Fascinating video. I think she has
Yeah.
3 parts. The first one is just it's chock full of cool little nuggets for those who are messing with the
Yeah.
nervous system.
I love that you, as a whole, it's like a um, have a thought or a theory on the thing that
Yep.
then a bit like Einstein with thought experiments. It's like the
Mm.
most of his work was done in his brain, like in his head, in his
That's
mind,
awesome.
like not actually
I
in a
love it.
lab.
I
So
love it.
yeah, having a you're creating a thought experiment, and then you're testing and retesting and just
Yeah.
working things out, and it's actually super refreshing to also hear someone saying, like,
Oh,
clearly you know a lot of stuff, but you're also happy to go, don't know
yeah.
about that, but then also go, I know that works, so I do it.
But that's it. That's it's funny when we go do these workshops. That's a lot of times people say, like, man, I've never had a teacher say I don't know so much. But I also have never had a teacher that everything you show us is like so tight. I'm like, yeah, because I've experimented with a lot of stuff. I'm only bringing you guys my best hits. Like I'm showing you stuff that has worked on thousands of people.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
the stuff I talk about is like, hey, I might not understand the mechanism. I don't know if other people do or don't yet, but I'm here to report what has worked in the trenches
yeah,
across the board on every single person. And then it's kind of fun for me because I go into situations. If I get a new thought or something I want to test, I'll build a theory in my head. I'm like, all right, usually can get it down. I bet it's either this or this. So
yeah,
then I'll kind of argue with myself in my own mind, and like, all right, I'm in camp A, but then I got to test it out, and like, am I going to prove myself right or prove myself
yeah,
wrong?
yeah.
Every time I'm wrong, I laugh at myself, like, look how stupid I was. So it's kind of fun, and I think that we need more of that in our industry. We need more humility instead of like this can't be. A lot of people who are not familiar with the nervous system stuff, like this can't be. I'm like, dude, you've only been looking through the goggles of tissue. So
Mm,
just because there's stuff out there that your brain hasn't even entertained, it doesn't make it not so. It just means that you're just getting woken up to there's other stuff out there. So just because you're a personal trainer for 10 years, like you really think you've seen everything with the human body in 10 years in a gym, like give me a break. Like we all have to have humility that we
yeah,
have such a limited understanding. So and that's why I love sticking with like just base principles. The brain loves information. And when there's not enough information coming into it from our sensory system, it's going to start perceiving a lot of different environments as a threat.
yeah,
So all we're trying to do is instead of coaching them up and work hardening them, we're actually identifying where is their lack of sensory input, give the brain that, restore that, and now we can then go and beat them up. Now we can do some heavy lifting and
yeah,
sprinting and all that. So we're not trying to keep people away from those things. We're just making sure that the software, we're never going to get perfect. So I say we're shooting for stars, we're going to hit the clouds, but we're going to just get a little bit more order to the nervous system so that you can get more and more goodies out of your exercise, and it'll be a lot safer as well because now you're
yeah.
you're not zigging and zagging, you're not compensating as much as you were prior to receiving some square one.
Yeah, no, I just want to pull out something you said there that also feel like um, you're you're assessing the nervous system, and you're seeing how the nervous system is sort of expressing whether it's happy or not, potentially.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
is
I say happy or not happy. I use that same terminology often. I keep
yeah.
it real simple. Hmm.
And I'm going to ask you to give your sort of simplest phrase because it sounds like you're going to I want to give you the chance to sort of something it's super complicated. Like it's super complicated. It's we're not saying it's simple, but I think someone like yourself that has done this type of work for so long with so many people are going to have a
Yeah.
way to simplify this down for people to understand. But just before that, the you said about one of the things like almost like making a happy guy. If it's seeing that the nervous system isn't happy, it's protecting, it's guarding,
Mhm.
it's seeing it's not safe.
Mhm.
You then provide sensory input to reset
Yep.
it or to give it a
Yep.
bit more information rather than it being, oh, I don't want to know.
Yep.
Um, and from what you said before, that being, it could be movement, joint proprioception, it could be visual.
Yep. So I was thinking joint positions. eye positions and head positions. So
Okay.
head positions would correlate with the vestibular system, like the
Yeah.
inner ear, like how your brain quickly finds where your head is in space, and it's huge with balance. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you think of vestibular as just
Give
like
us
this
an
balance.
give us an example of where, like, what might, just for someone, like, what might that look
Sure,
like if I've
sure.
got someone that is struggling with internal rotation
Everly.
on their right
Sure.
shoulder.
Yep.
What
Yep.
might
So I don't look for specific inputs that lead to that shoulder piece. I always say I let all that downstream stuff, all the range of motion restrictions and the lack of force production or lack of power, whatever that downstream thing is. I always tell people I have no control over what I'm doing. If it's going to take you out of pain, make you run faster, jump higher, all those things, two of the three. All I'm going to do is I'm going to find out how you're organized right now. And we're all
okay,
either organized to avoid right and favor left or vice versa,
okay,
up versus down, the same thing. And I don't gauge that by watching them move. I'll do a neural response test, and they'll
yeah,
have the person literally go head up, and I'll check the test. And a lot of
okay,
times it grabs, and when I look down, it fails. And then I'll have them look right, turn their whole head. And if it fails, and then they turn left, it's
okay,
organized. Like, oh, okay. So up and turning your head left is how you're personally getting organized right now.
right,
And down and left is how you're compensating. So all we really need to find is where are the gaps in those strong responses.
yeah,
So instead of looking at the negative as a negative, I don't look at it that negative in our standpoint. It's really looking at inefficiency, and compensation is inefficient, and compensation is an aversion and avoidance strategy. So
yeah,
we're really looking at those patterns that help that person become organized, and we find where there's a gap there. So if we're looking at joint actions, and I just said, okay, left head turn is organizing a person, a right head turn disorganizes. Immediately, I'm like, okay, this is right step. Right step. When the right foot hits the ground, they're going to get organized. So what I'll then do is I will mimic ground reaction forces at their hips, at their lumbar spine, their T spine, their neck, up and down the kinetic chain. And what I'm doing is I'm mimicking in three planes of movement. So if it's like your right hip, I'll have them bring their right knee to their chest. I'll check the nervous system. I'll have them do adduction. I'll check the nervous system. I'll have them do hip internal rotation, check the nervous system. And if all three are solid, okay, let's go to left hip.
what's the
Same.
check, what's the check the
Yep.
nervous system?
So that neural response test. So maybe
Okay,
it's an
yeah,
arm test or leg
okay.
test. It doesn't matter what
So
part. So
you mimic the leg movement, then you're redoing the, like, arm to, yeah,
yeah,
okay,
yep, exactly. So the arm test, it's like a red light, green light, I'll say all the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
not really an arm test. It's really a nervous system happy or unhappy test kind of
yeah,
deal.
yeah, yeah,
So if all the things in the right hip is cool, I'll go to the left hip. Oh, abduction. It's supposed to have this safe response, this nice solid response. I shove their left hip in abduction and it fails. Boom, then now I can intervene.
yeah,
So the input would then be an isometric contraction into left hip abduction if we want to do it proprioceptively, because we need that specific input. Like what are they really wiring around and avoiding? If we want to do it through the vestibular system, well, if head left organized and head right fail, two nasal breath. It would be left head turn with a nasal breath, combined with, followed up with right lean with a nasal breath. That's all we're doing for resetting the vestibular system. It's very specific head positions with nasal breathing.
right,
And for the eye reset, for this example of right versus left, right being strong, you could literally just have them look left, breathe through their nose. And then the fourth input could be the tragus. Now, what's really cool is I would say it's one building, three doors. So your nervous system doesn't care if we're given a proprioceptive input, vestibular, or visual. It just needs that input to feel
yeah,
safe in that environment again.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's really cool. So the nervous system can be very picky in one regard, but at the same time, it just needs to know that specific environment of hip abduction, which is part of right steps. So there's a right step with a vestibular and eyes to, so all the different things we just talked about, the specific inputs, they're all part of the same pattern. So we just have to give it at least one of those inputs to get it to feel safe again. Check the muscle, check that neural response test, load them into what was just a bad pattern and they're solid. So now we have them temporary homeostasis. And then we challenge them. Okay, jump up and down, or do your push-ups, or throw a baseball, or swing
yeah,
a hockey stick, or whatever their sport or activity they're trying to do. Then we just kind of tailor to, like, okay, let's put you in environments that you're already doing, and let's not assume that just because you're doing grounding and sitting at the bottom of the squat and nasal breathing, those are all good things. But what if your nervous system perceives the bottom of the squat as a problem because
yeah.
of a past car accident or a past sporting event when you were 10 years old and you're still carrying that with you? So it just
Yeah.
it's like I feel like I'm shaking their cage, find out
Yeah.
what falls, give them an input, and do it again. It's like Humpty Dumpty. So I
Yeah.
keep putting Humpty Dumpty on a wall,
Mhm.
kick him off, patch it up,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
making a wall higher and higher and higher, and we're raising their resilience. So a lot of times after 1 or 2 sessions, it's like borderline unethical. We have to do like, look, I'm not actually going to push you down the steps, but they're handling squats and plyometric stuff, and they're
Yeah.
doing all kinds. Even lightly, put some boxing gloves on, hit them a couple times. And people are holding up to this stuff now, so they're so much more resilient neurologically. But
Yeah.
that's one of the goals, to raise their game on the neurological resilience.
Do you find that the sort of psychological side of injury and pain
Mm.
is improved with this as well, or is that something that
Yeah.
separately influences the nervous? So it's probably quite a big question, isn't
Uh,
it? You're just
That's
making me
probably
think of
both.
it.
I think I've seen it change, but I mean, do we ever really get out of it? Like I know for my own self, like when I hurt my back, it was basically I was reaching down to the ground to get a basketball, in a game situation, and my buddy jumped on my shoulders, my chest went into my knees, and I was not like some really flexible 14, 15-year-old guy. So even now I don't usually have a lot of back pain. I still catch myself babying myself. I put my hands on my
Yeah,
knees.
yeah, yeah,
Hey, idiot, it's been 20 some years. So I still feel these little fears still come up. That's
yeah.
better than it used to be. But I think it's one situation where we had a student of ours in Dallas, Damon Patterson. He was working with a fairly high level American football players, either high college level, maybe he's an NFL guy. I can't remember the specifics. And this guy was having an issue with landing, I think on single leg. So he was just having him just hopping up and down at first. And by the end, he has a box that's 4 feet tall, which is it's over a meter high. And then the guy's literally jumping off, and he's like, "I don't know what you did, but I'm not afraid of it anymore." So there are these times
Yeah.
where you have that sixth sense telling you to hold back. We actually have people report all the time, like, "Wow, I don't feel like I need to hold back anymore on this
Yeah.
thing."
It
You know?
maybe depends on the type of injury it was and how long it's
Yeah.
gone in for. The
Yeah, and how
psychological
much
side
how
of
much
it.
is tied into it? Their psyche going into it, their personality, how egregious were they hurt 10 times or was it one time? I mean, probably a lot of things probably factor into that, I would imagine. But yeah, we have some anecdotal evidence where, yep, we see that go away on some level for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you a sort of my final question is the chance
Yeah, yeah.
to the notion, like we've spoken a lot about the nervous system, and clearly you like working with the nervous system, and those that are involved in and will have heard me bang on about the nervous system in regards to like breathing,
Mm,
HRV as a measurement for it, and how breathing
yeah,
can influence the nervous system, and we can
yeah.
we can use our breathing to change that. You're working with the nervous system in a very what feels like um, intricate way, very delicate way. Like
Bit more specific, a little bit more direct. And like that's what I say
yeah,
too, like sort of catch up, but like all those things of breathing and grounding, I love those things. Those are part of my
yeah,
morning
yeah,
routine. I look at that a little bit more of that's like a hand grenade toss, and I got a sniper rifle. And
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I do those same things. So I'm
It's
not
sort of it's just a bit like overall we can make the nervous system feel a bit better, but if when you're looking at someone's locomotion pattern and they're like fearing going on to the left,
mm,
doing a down regulation breathing practice might make them feel nice and relaxed, but you've not addressed the potential
yes.
issues in that. I get it. And so
Yeah, yeah.
um I was wanting to see whether you would you mentioned things like is the nervous system is almost like asking am I safe or not, is this position safe or not, and it
Mm-hmm.
needs more information when it doesn't, and you provide that. Do you
Mm-hmm.
have a way, or would you like to try to simplify the complexity of the nervous system in a sort of final takeaway
Mm,
comment for the
yeah,
listener to be able to go, oh, I've never
I
really
like
thought
it.
of the nervous system like that before.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, I like that. I think I got one. 'Cause I get so many different analogies.
Yeah.
I think the one that might apply is I think of like Christmas tree lights. Like you decorate the Christmas tree, all the bulbs are on until one goes out, then a whole slew of them go out.
Okay. Yeah.
No, right. So what you got to do is you actually instead of replacing all 14 bulbs or whatever out, you just have to find that one that kind of tripped up the system. So I
Yeah.
think that's what we're doing with square one is we're able to find out which of the bulbs is the culprit, give it, fix that, and then all the other downstream lights come back on. So I think in a
Yeah.
nutshell, that
Nice.
would kind of encapsulate visually kind of what I see in my mind that we're doing. And then, but again, if we go back to some of those practical things we're talking about for your audience, if people just start incorporating, and you're already advising them on breathing, so I think nasal breathing, just
Yeah.
from what I've learned, experimented, nasal inhale, it's super magical, man. Like if when we're looking at these eye movements, we check nasal exhale, mouth inhale, mouth exhale, nothing good happens. As soon as there's a nasal inhale with any kind of eye movement, it's like, whoa, the nervous system is like, thank you very much. This is amazing. So I would just
Yeah.
encourage people to, after every set, if there's someone who works out,
Yeah.
just mess with, like, kind of do some eye movements and nasal breath, throw some tragus in there, and then just
That's good.
see what happens. See if over a couple workouts or so you start noticing some positive things happen, as in a very general sense. So we don't
Yeah.
have to hit everything with the sniper rifle. You can do some general things that it should
Yeah.
still move the needle in a nice direction for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. I like it. I will personally test a few
Yeah.
of those
Yeah.
things out when I'm training, and I'll report back. I'll also play around with
Yeah.
Mrs. Jacko's hip internal
Yeah. I'd like to
rotation
see that.
and test that.
Get the camera out. If you see some big restriction, like
Yeah.
film it, because it's kind of fun.
Okay.
I'd
I'll
encourage you
show
to
you.
do that. And then
Um,
next time I'm in the UK, man, maybe hook up and we'll I'll come over to
yes.
Wales, come over to London or something, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, no, that for sure, that would be brilliant. And there'll be some people that like me will go like, right, I'll go and try and play away with some of those things. There'll be other people that are like, I want to, I want to go and see this guy or someone that
Sure.
he's trained. You train practitioners, right? Or
Yep.
they were like, right, I'm a physio, I'm an osteo, I'm a PT. I want to train in Square One system.
Sure.
How do
Yep.
people find out more about the different
Sure.
ways they can interact with yourself and your business and your framework?
I'll give you two places. Instagram is where I'm most active, and that's at Square One System. So it's singular and it's a numerical one. So it's not
Yeah.
ONE, it's Square One System.
We'll put the link in the show notes. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then the website is the same. It's www Square One System. So both places would be appropriate places to learn a little more detail about how to get a little bit more deeply involved with us if you want to, for sure. Or
Yeah,
I tell people just go on Instagram and send me a message. I'm usually pretty responsive. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes it takes me a day or three, but I
yeah,
I, I check it fairly often. That'd
yeah.
be a great place.
But you've got in-person workshops, you've got
Yeah,
online
so
courses, you've got different
yeah,
ways people can
just
learn,
some
right?
online stuff you can learn. Our live workshops I think are the best because
Yeah.
it's a bugger to learn this neural response test through a digital course. It's
You
not
sort
impossible.
of ideally we didn't want to. I get it. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
nice to have someone like, yeah, you're doing it well, you're not, just to
yeah,
get that
yeah,
person. So when anybody who does their level one receives 3 accompanying online courses, and anybody who does their level 2 gets another online course. So, and we do those mostly here in the States, but I've done about 3 or 4 now in Europe. We're coming back to Italy. We're probably going to be going to somewhere around London in July. So we have some stuff coming up in Europe
Okay,
here.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, let me know when you're in the UK.
yeah,
I'd 100% love to come to one.
yeah, for sure, man. Absolutely. I'll definitely, I'll send you some details.
Yeah, yeah. No, please do. Awesome. Thanks so much for your time. And
Oh, man.
people listening, go go check out even at least give the Instagram a follow, and you'll start to see some. I guess the Instagram will give you an idea visually of like some of the things we were talking about and see it in
Mm,
action, and it
yeah.
is mind blowing, and you're going to want to know more. So I highly recommend checking Shawn's workout with Square One system.
Thank you for this opportunity. Appreciate
Yeah.
you, buddy.
Take care, man. There we have it. Massive thank you to Shawn from Square One System for being on the podcast. I, for one, am going to find out. Apparently, I think he said off air it's going to be in June. It's still, July. It's going to be confirmed when he's back in the UK. I am going to make sure that I am in London or wherever he is going to be to run those workshops because I am fascinated in the human body, fascinated in movement, fascinated in performance, fascinated in the nervous system being something that we can work with, and the underlying, like breathing being an underlying process that's going on, and it's communicating with the nervous system to learn and understand more about how the movement system, particularly how it affects movement. I know for a lot of you as well will be interested. So go check him out. The link for his Instagram is in the show notes, and then keep an eye out for when he's in the UK. Maybe we do a team one together. It's like we all come together and we do a between breaths meetup. I don't know, but some of you are definitely going to want to come to that workshop, and I look forward to seeing you there as well. But don't forget, before then, if you want to come to, I've got some workshops coming up. I've got Manchester, 6th of April, and I've got the Oxygen Vantage retreat in Scotland in May, 17th to 19th of May. Then there's the online certification starting on the 2nd of April. So do check them out. You might want to come to, I don't know if this is going to be whether we're still in time for the Tenerife training retreat, but there's still a place available for that. That's the 21st to 24th of March, Tenerife training retreat. Check that out if you've still got time and if there's still that space available. Hopefully there is. Hopefully see you there. If not, it means we're going to see someone else there, which is also cool. But you can always come next year. So I'm going to sign off by saying, you've been breathing. I've been Jacko. Till next time, keep it nasal.